welcome to the Secrets of Happily Ever After. I am so excited to be talking about a topic that is really important, and that is your responsibility for developing your own sexuality. Now, this is a topic that comes up often when I'm coaching couples. And so I want to talk about why it's important, and then I'm going to give you some ways in which you can really start to develop your own sexuality. Before we get started, I want to let you know about the 2023 Sex Seminar that is now available, where 31 experts, including yours truly, talk about all different topics surrounding sex and sexuality in your marriage. So we talk about preparing for it before you're actually married. We have experts talking about hormones and how often you should be having sex, how to make it more exciting, how to make it more intimate, things that can go wrong, how to prioritize it even in the busiest seasons of your life. All of your most burning questions about sex are answered in this online seminar that you can watch on your own or with your partner from the privacy of your own couch. And if you use the links that I'm going to give you in the show notes, you're going to save almost 50%. So the 2023 Sex Seminar is regularly $35, but my link is going to give you $15 off, which makes it only $20 for 31 presentations. Or you can purchase a bundle, which is the last 4 years of sex seminars. I have 2 different presentations in that, where you get a whole bunch more for just $46. But you have to use the link in the show notes or on my social media anywhere. So I hope that you will get this special deal before it's gone. All right, now to the main content of this episode. I want to talk about why it's important to take responsibility for developing your own sexuality. Now, the thing is, we are all sexual beings. So sexuality is just as much a part of you as your intellect, as your physicality, as your emotions. So if you were trying to develop your physicality, you would need to go to the gym and work out or practice a sport or something like that. If you wanted to develop your intellect, you would need to read books and think about ideas. If you wanted to develop the social part of you, you would have to go out and make friends and be social, right? So it only goes to reason that if you wanted to develop your sexuality, you're going to have to focus on it. And that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people, mostly because of how our culture thinks about sexuality and probably how your parents talked about it and taught about it when you were growing up. For most of us, sexuality was pretty much off limits before we got married. And then all of a sudden, it becomes this really important part of our marriage relationship that we haven't spent very much time on. Now, one of my favorite marriage researchers is Emily Nagoski, and she talks about our sexuality like a garden. And as we're growing up, people like our parents, our church leaders, society, our role models are planting things in our garden. Some of them are pretty and some of them are weeds. And we don't have any control over what's being planted in our garden as we're growing up. But once we become adults, and especially when we get married, we become responsible for tending our own garden, which means that it's our responsibility to pull out the weeds that are choking out the goodness, to rototill that soil, and then to plant the seeds of the beautiful flowers or nutritious vegetables that we want to cultivate in that garden. So today I want to talk about why that's important and how to do it. So taking responsibility for your own sexual development involves understanding your body, your sexual responses, your desires, your boundaries, and your attitudes towards sex. It's all about self-discovery and personal growth. But why is that so important in your marriage? Let's break it down. Number one, there's self-awareness. Knowing your own sexual desire and responses equips you to communicate these effectively with your partner, leading to greater satisfaction for both of you. Meaning, if you're not aware of how your body functions, what brings you pleasure, what is uncomfortable for you, what your desires are, then there's no way your partner is going to know any of that. And so it's really important to become familiar with yourself and how you operate so that you can communicate that well to your spouse. Number two, it's really empowering to finally take responsibility for your own sexual development. It takes most people a very long time to realize that when we become responsible for developing this part of ourselves, we have so much more power over the experiences we have in our life. Owning your sexual development gives you a sense of control and autonomy over your sexual experiences. This can not only enhance your self-esteem, but also your sexual confidence. Taking responsibility for your desires is not only very sexy to your partner, but also will turn you on as well. Part of being responsible for your own sexual development is understanding your boundaries. Knowing your own sexual boundaries enables you to communicate them with your partner, fostering a safer, more respectful sexual relationship. As you become more self-aware and more empowered, you will feel more confident expressing to your partner where your boundaries lie. Resilience is another really important benefit of taking responsibility for your own sexuality, because as you become more confident in this area of your life, it will better prepare you to navigate sexual challenges or changes that will arise in your relationship. Normally, when you're young, everything works as it's supposed to, but there will be health challenges. There will be changes to your hormonal and physical rhythms that you will have to work out. But when you take responsibility for knowing yourself in this way, it will help you work through those challenges together as a team. And lastly, that teamwork element is really important. When both partners in a relationship take responsibility for their own sexual development, it leads to a deepened mutual understanding and shared growth. There is nothing more vulnerable than navigating your own and your partner's sexual desire. But when both partners are willing to take responsibility for their own growth and development in this area, it's so much more fun to explore it together. Now, you may be thinking, that all sounds great, but how do I take responsibility for my own sexual development? It's not something that gets talked about very often, especially not at parties. So let's talk about a few ways you can start to pull the weeds and plant beautiful flowers and nutritious vegetables in your own sexual gardens. Number one, self-reflection is so important. I want you to spend time thinking about your own sexual experiences, attitudes, and beliefs. What messages have you received about sex throughout your life? What were you taught about it? What were you taught about your body and bodies of the opposite sex? How have these messages influenced your sexuality? What are your desires, preferences, and boundaries when it comes to sex? Reflecting on these questions can help you gain a better understanding of where you're starting from. For example, if you're extremely uncomfortable communicating about sex, where did that come from? If you have a certain desire pertaining to sex, maybe you want to try something new. Where does this desire stem from? Perhaps there's certain things that your partner wants to try that are very scary or uncomfortable to you. Think about your experiences growing up and what might have caused that kind of discomfort. Because once you understand those things, you can open up a dialogue with your partner so that you can better understand yourself and them in relation to these types of ideas. So self-reflection is a really important step and a great way to start pulling the weeds out of your garden. Because once you're familiar with how your different ideas, beliefs, opinions, and preferences were formed, you can decide, is this something that's helping or hurting my relationship? And if it's not serving you, then it's a weed, and you can work together or independently to pull those noxious weeds out from that garden and plant something that will be more connecting and unifying in its place. So how do we get the good information, right? Start by learning about human sexuality. This can involve reading reputable books, attending workshops or seminars, listening to podcasts like this one, or taking online courses. Learn about sexual responses, different forms of intimacy, sexual health, and sexual rights. This will help you understand the basic concepts and vocabulary related to sexuality, which can be a springboard for further exploration and discussion. Now, the important thing here is that you find teachers or role models or experts that align with your values around sexuality. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that they say, but there's a lot of misinformation out there about our sexuality and what's good and right about it. And if you're listening to someone that doesn't share your values, it probably won't be very helpful to you. So the best thing that you can do is keep an open mind and find experts who share your values but can help bring out new ideas and thoughts that you can consider planting in your garden. All right, number 3 is communication. Openly communicating about sex with your partner is crucial for sexual development. Share your desires, your fears, your boundaries, and even your fantasies. This not only helps you understand your own sexuality better, but it also fosters intimacy and trust in your relationship. Now, sometimes when I'm talking to women, I find that sometimes it is harder for wives to be vulnerable in this way. It's easier for them to kind of push down, subdue, or hide from their own sexuality. Now, I have a lot of ideas about why this might be, but sexual intercourse is extremely vulnerable, especially for women. But as we talked about in the beginning of this episode, taking responsibility for your own sexuality, learning about it, developing it, practicing it will help you be able to create that safety in your relationship, be able to establish good boundaries and have good confidence around your sexuality, which I guarantee will bless your relationship. So even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels vulnerable, I challenge you to open up this line of conversation with your spouse. I often recommend that couples start talking about this not in their bedroom, but in some neutral, uncharged location. Usually, if you can be walking and talking, this is a great non-threatening way to start discussing topics around sexuality where you're not like staring into each other's eyes. I also recommend that you set up a regular time, like Tuesday sex talks, where you're regularly returning to this topic, checking in with each other, sharing what you're learning about yourself and about each other, because this is such an important part of your relationship and intimacy. I encourage you not to ignore it. There are many places where resentment forms in a relationship, but I have found that the most dangerous resentment often forms around developing emotional, physical, and sexual intimacy in your relationship. relationship. So make sure that you're talking about it. Number 4, I suggest that my students, especially those who are exploring and developing their own sexuality, I like to teach them a practice I call sexy meditation. Now, this is similar to normal meditation, where you want to seat yourself in a comfortable place, generally alone, and you want to think about things that turn you on. Now, I am talking about sexually because this is sexy meditations, but your own sexuality is so deeply connected and linked to your vitality. So you want to be thinking about things that turn you on or give you pleasure intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically as well. So when you're doing this meditation, I want you to engage all of your senses, meaning I want you to experiment with different textures. So if you have laundry nearby, like experiment with different textures on your skin. What feels good to you? Think about and experiment with different smells, different perfumes, or scented candles. Think about how you like the lighting to be, or what kind of music is pleasurable to you. When you engage all of your senses and you take some time to think about and experiment with different things that feel good to you, that bring you pleasure, that light you up and turn you on, it's so helpful to be able to communicate these findings with your partner. I like to be touched softly or slowly. I like the lights to be dim. I like soft music playing in the background. And I prefer the scent of vanilla over cinnamon. We are all made so differently. And so take some time to really discover the things that you like and the things that you don't, because nothing kills the mood more than hearing, seeing, or tasting something that you really do not like. All right, number 5. Seeking professional help. If you're dealing with sexual issues or you just want to deepen your understanding of your own sexuality, consider seeking help from an intimacy coach or a sex therapist. These professionals can provide you with guidance, support, and resources to aid in your sexual development. In addition, you can be reading books, listening to podcasts, attending things like the 2023 sex seminar in order to get your questions about sex answered, and find role models that are teaching principles that align with your values and interests. And finally, embrace change. Recognize that sexual development is an ongoing process. Your preferences, desires, and boundaries may change over time, and that's perfectly okay. Continue to explore, to learn, to experiment, and communicate about sex throughout your life. Remember, everybody's journey of sexual development is unique. There's no right or wrong way to explore or express your own sexuality. The most important thing is that your journey is consensual, respectful, and fulfilling to both you and your partner. There's a statistic that talks about how when a relationship is going well, the sexual part of that relationship is a small percentage of the satisfaction felt by both parties. However, when there are problems in the relationship, the sexual relationship is a much bigger part. It feels like a much bigger part of the problem. So taking responsibility for developing your own sexuality is not something that you can ignore if you want to have an intimate, passionate, fulfilling, and satisfying partnership. If you have any questions or concerns about developing your own sexuality, I invite you to reach out to me. I work with couples all the time to help them feel a little bit more comfortable exploring and communicating about developing their sexuality and what an important piece this is of your overall marriage relationship. I also invite you to check out the 2023 Sex Seminar or the Sex Seminar Bundle, where you will get access to a whole bunch of my peers and friends who also feel passionate about helping couples get more comfortable exploring and expressing their sexuality within marriage. I'm so grateful you took this time to hang out with me today, and I will see you same time, same place next week. And until then, happy marriaging.
To learn more ways to deepen your intimacy and strengthen your relationship, make sure you watch this video next.